Hey everyone, it's Link Lauren. Welcome back to Spot On with Link Lauren. We have a lot to discuss today. Apparently Katy Perry might be dating Justin Trudeau. This could be a love for the ages. I don't know, maybe Justin Trudeau just wants to play around in her closet and try on her wigs. We will discuss all of that. President Trump is back from Scotland. We'll give you a recap of his trip. We'll give you an update on everything happening with Jasmine Crockett. We're going to talk about Pete Buttigieg, but we have to start off with a quick royal roundup because this story was not a shock to me, but it's something I had to share with you guys immediately. I said, you know what? Put it at the top of the show. Put it at the top of the show. I don't want to waste a minute. So apparently Meghan Markle, because her career is down in the gutter and in the doldrums, she has allegedly reached out to The View about being a guest or a guest host or having some kind of recurring position. And I think this is perfect, okay? I think The View is the perfect show for Meghan Markle because it's a bunch of women sitting around complaining who are out of touch with reality and have nothing going on and no talent. So I actually think this is perfect for Meghan Markle. She would be amazing on The View. She would be great. She would be fantastic. She can't be any worse. She cannot be worse than Joy Behar, Alyssa Farah Griffin, who are these other slores on The View? I'm trying to remember. Whoopi Goldberg, Sarah Haynes, Sunny Hostin. Oh my God. Sunny Hostin, let me just tell you. I think if Meghan Markle joins The View, Sunny Hostin is going to be pissed. Okay? If another half black woman joins The View, Sunny Hostin's going to be upset. Sunny Hostin is not going to be happy if Meghan Markle comes in there, but I do think The View would be a perfect show for Meghan Markle because she really doesn't have much going on. And these women who sit around on The View, they're so out of touch, right? They like to come on TV. Of course, The View is on ABC, which is owned by Disney. They come on TV and they basically tell you Trump is a dictator. He's a threat to democracy. The country was going to come to an end if he gets back in office. But these women get in their big SUVs with their tinted windows and they go back to their penthouse apartments or to their mansions in New Jersey, and they're so out of touch. They don't think about the rest of the country between Los Angeles and New York, okay? They live in their elite, liberal bubble, and I think that's perfect for Meghan Markle because she also lives in Montecito, which is this wealthy enclave. She lives in a massive mansion with security and staff and chefs and her, prince that she's married to, Prince Harry, who used to be the most eligible bachelor on earth. So I think Meghan Markle, I'm not shocked that she's reached out to The View, and let me read you a little bit about what's going on. So back in March, Joy Behar actually said there's something about Meghan Markle that triggers people, and she suggested that it could stem from jealousy because we all wanted to marry a prince. So everyone is jealous of her. Is that it? Well, yes. Back in the day, when Prince Harry was the most eligible ginger bachelor, I think people wanted him. Now you look at Prince Harry, he's like a little beta male bitch boy who has allowed this washed up actress named Meghan Markle with her scrawny legs and her little jean booty shorts to come in and torch the relationships he had with his family. Harry did that. People want to blame Meghan Markle. She's horrible. Y'all know I don't love Meghan Markle, okay? She's a liar. She accused the family of racism. She only lasted 18 months, and then she absconded to the United States. But Prince Harry, he's the one who allowed this woman to come in and take a wrecking ball to the relationship he had with his family. And now he says, boo-hoo, he can't go back to the UK. It's not safe. And then we find out the guy is walking around in broad daylight, ringing random doorbells. So all of these people are full of crap. I think Joy Behar and Meghan Markle are a match made in heaven. I hope she joins The View because it'll give us nothing but great fodder to discuss. Meghan Markle, she's an expert on nothing. Okay, she's an expert on absolutely nothing and everything she touches turns to crap. But let's put her on The View and get her opinion on current affairs. That sounds great. Now, this last story is a little more niche, okay? If you're not super into the royal family, bear with me though, because you'll be able to relate to this a little bit, okay? In our own lives, we can all relate to this in some way, shape, or form. So apparently, Sophie is married to Prince Edward. Well, she was upgraded from the Countess of Wessex to the Duchess of Edinburgh, okay? She got a little bit of a promotion. This is a big deal. But let me tell you why it's important. So both Queen Elizabeth and Queen Camilla previously held this title, but what this title means for Sophie, beautiful Sophie, is that she no longer has to curtsy to Meghan Markle, okay? In the line of succession, she no longer has to curtsy to Meghan Markle, okay? That is a booyah moment. We've all been there in life, okay? Whether it's a boss or someone you don't like who's higher in the pecking order than you are, you're tired of having to kiss the ring, having to be nice all the time. She doesn't want to curtsy anymore to this washed up Duchess, wannabe Duchess of Scamelot if she ever comes over to the UK. Could you imagine your British royalty Born and raised in the UK, you revere the crown, you revere the monarchy, as Sophie and Prince Edward do. Of course, we love Prince Edward. Could you imagine Meghan Markle comes back to the UK and you have to curtsy to her? You have to curtsy to Meghan Markle. So apparently Sophie is happy about this, okay? Sophie is relieved. Her friend revealed to reporters, according to Hello magazine, she no longer has to curtsy to someone in the family who has not only left royal duties, but has spent the past 3 years criticizing the institution that Sophie worked so hard to support. Because all of these royals, they do their royal engagements, right? They show up for a million charities, they cut their ribbons, they manage their businesses and their household and all of that. Meghan Markle didn't want to do that. She was lazy. Okay, she's so lazy she can't even sell her jams, jellies, and dog biscuits. But now Sophie no longer has to curtsy to Meghan Markle. I think King Charles should just make a sweeping rule that nobody has to curtsy to Meghan Markle. Why should they have to curtsy to basically a washed up reality star whose Netflix deal is already canceled? Okay, nobody should have to curtsy to her. But that concludes our quick royal roundup. We can all relate. Okay, we can all relate to having a boss or someone who's above us that we feel like we have to kiss the ring and treat with all of this respect and, give lip service to. No more. No more does she have to curtsy to Meghan Markle. And I imagine she is very happy about that. So congratulations, Sophie, on your new title. And I hope, Meghan Markle, you go and join The View because I think that's a perfect place for you. I think that is a perfect show for you to be on. Now, this next person, I never thought I'd be talking about on Spot On with Link Lauren. She's not someone I really kept up with. I did love the movie Freaky Friday. Okay, growing up, I loved Freaky Friday with Lindsay Lohan. They're doing a reboot or a remake. I think it's called Freakier Friday. Anyway, nonetheless, they're doing this big remake of Freaky Friday. Well, Jamie Lee Curtis, she's taken a break from doing her Activia commercials and she's done some press. And she recently did an interview with The Guardian in which she discussed plastic surgery trends among women in the United States, not just Hollywood. Okay, she launched her invective against any woman who ever does anything to maintain or spruce herself up because that's her prerogative and what she wants to do. And if you're watching us on YouTube, you can see the cover of this magazine in which she did the interview. She has big blown up lips, which obviously is paying homage to what she spoke about in the actual interview. So let me read you some of her quotes. So Jamie Lee Curtis, she has slammed the plastic surgery industry as a genocide of women. She says, I've been very vocal about the genocide of a generation of women by the cosmeceutical industrial complex who've disfigured themselves. Okay, this is someone trying to sound smart. The cosmeceutical industrial complex. Who the hell talks like that, okay? She wants us to think she's in Mensa. I'm here to tell you, Jamie Lee Curtis, she's not Einstein. But this is what she told The Guardian. And on the word genocide, she says, I've used that word for a long time, and I use it specifically because it's a strong word. I believe that we have wiped out a generation or two of natural human appearance. The concept that you can't alter the way you look through chemicals, surgical procedures, fillers. There's a disfigurement of generations of predominantly women who are altering their appearance. Now, here's where things get interesting. Jamie Lee Curtis herself disclosed that she regretted opting for an unspecified cosmetic procedure in her mid-20s after a cinematographer criticized her under-eye bag. So Jamie Lee Curtis, you've had plastic surgery yourself, so you're full of crap. Why should we be listening to you? And here's my thing. I agree. The Kardashians and social media have millions of women second-guessing themselves, thinking they should go out and do things, but saying there is a genocide of women using inflammatory language just to get some clicks and some views to promote your movie is absolutely ridiculous. And what I find so hypocritical, and maybe we can put a picture up on the screen, what I find so hypocritical is that Lindsay Lohan, okay, her daughter, she calls her daughter, her co-star, who's in this Freaky Friday remake with her. Lindsay Lohan, Jamie Lee Curtis, two stars, they've been friends for decades. Lindsay Lohan, in my opinion, has had a lot of work done, okay? Lindsay Lohan looks incredible. I don't know what she had done over in Dubai, over in the Middle East, but let me tell you, she wasn't under the knife for 10 minutes or an hour or 2 hours. That was probably a lot of work, if you ask me. So Lindsay Lohan looks like a totally new person. She looks refreshed. She actually looks incredible. Everyone online is like, please tell us who your doctor is. Please tell us what you're doing, Lindsay Lohan. She basically wiped away those 10 years of partying and doing cocaine and falling out of nightclubs. So basically, Lindsay Lohan has had a ton of work, and I wonder how she feels about these quotes and comments from Jamie Lee Curtis saying that there's a genocide of women who are getting plastic surgery. I will say, there are tons of women online now. There's this whole movement, the anti-plastic surgery movement, where women are saying, you know what, we're not getting work done, we're not getting Botox, we're not getting fillers. But also, I feel like if you're a woman who supports women, right? Jamie Lee Curtis, you're supposed to support women. Do you just denigrate and tear them down because they're doing something to try and make themselves feel better? Nobody goes under the knife thinking they're going to wake up and look worse. They're going under the knife or having cosmetic procedures because maybe there's an insecurity there. Maybe there's just something they want to improve on. It's their prerogative, right? Isn't that what all women's liberation is about, Jamie Lee Curtis? So you want all this women's liberation and women have the right to do what they want and yada, 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 but then you're upset that they're going and getting plastic surgery. So Jamie Lee Curtis, you're full of crap. Something else I find hypocritical, Jamie Lee Curtis, as far as I'm told, has a transgender daughter. So a son that then became a daughter, right? So you're upset with women going out there and having cosmetic procedures, but you're not upset that your son allegedly sterilized himself in the name of transgenderism. You're not upset that your own child is using their body as a biological experiment because they feel that they're trans. Why don't you worry about that? Instead of all these other women like your co-star Lindsay Lohan who have had some plastic surgery, Jamie Lee Curtis. So you're full of crap. Also, we're supposed to believe that Jamie Lee Curtis hasn't had anything done in decades. I call a flag on the play. Okay, I don't really know what calling a flag on the play means, but I don't think it's good. So I'm calling a flag on the play for Jamie Lee Curtis. You're full of crap. Why don't you talk to your own daughter who uses her body as an experiment, and all of these people, and this is also what's so insane to me. Jamie Lee Curtis, when push comes to shove, she probably supports the transing of children. She supports teenage girls getting mastectomies because they're told that they have gender dysphoria and that they're born in the wrong body. You think that's fine. But if a woman wants to go get lip fillers like you're making fun of on the cover of that magazine, suddenly there's a genocide of women and she's falling victim to the cosmeceutical industrial complex. Jamie Lee Curtis, I think your time is up. Now, we already talked about one little beta male, Prince Harry, earlier in this episode, but now we have to talk about Justin Trudeau, the former Prime Minister of Canada. Now, I've never been a big fan of Justin Trudeau and all the LGBTQIA R2D2 type of stuff he pushes, okay? Justin Trudeau, can't stand him, never liked him, he's a little beta male. He apparently, is now dating Katy Perry. They were spotted by TMZ on some dates. Apparently they went to dinner. They allegedly hung out the next day. There are all these pictures now of Katy Perry and Justin Trudeau hanging out, going on this date night. And I think this is perfect. I think this is perfect because maybe Justin Trudeau can play in Katy Perry's closet. He can try on her clothes. He can play with her wigs. They can play dress up. This is amazing, actually. This is amazing. And apparently Katy Perry has a type because Justin Trudeau sort of looks like her ex and the father of her child, Orlando Bloom. But Katy Perry, she's having sort of this lull in her career. We've all seen the videos going viral of Katy Perry's tour. It looks like a calamity. She doesn't seem to be at the height of her career. She can't keep up with Taylor Swift and a lot of other women in Hollywood who've been able to evolve and continue to sell records. Katy Perry, she's an icon. She has incredible music. Last Friday Night, I Kissed a Girl, Teenage Dream. These were all incredible songs, but we're talking about things that came out 15, 17 years ago here. And so for Katy Perry, I have to imagine she's in her head going, okay, this is going to be a come up, right? Because if you're a liberal in Hollywood, if you're a woke liberal in Hollywood, you probably think dating Justin Trudeau is going to elevate you. All of us here in reality, we can't stand Justin Trudeau, and I wouldn't go near the man with a 10-foot pole, okay? Justin Trudeau is probably the type of guy who cries after sex and has to take like a scalding hot shower and go call his mom. Okay, that's who Justin Trudeau is. So I probably wouldn't be dating Justin Trudeau. So Katy Perry, this is actually a perfect man for you. But let me read you a little bit about what is going on between them, and maybe this will mean something to you if you live in Montreal. Katy Perry and Justin Trudeau, they were seen dining at Montreal restaurant Le Violon on Monday night as it was captured by TMZ. They seemed to be cozy next to each other and very interested in the conversation. An eyewitness told TMZ the two sipped cocktails and shared several dishes, including one with lobster. Apparently, security guards were keeping tabs on both of them, sitting at the bar with their backs turned, monitoring the date through the mirrored glass. After their meal, they made their way to the kitchen to thank the staff personally. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? Could you just imagine? You're working a long shift. I worked in a restaurant, right? You're working a long shift. It's hot as hell. You're in the kitchen. You just want to go home and clock out from your restaurant gig. And now you have to hang out with Katy Perry and Justin Trudeau. You probably would think you're in the seventh ring of hell. You're like, is this purgatory? I worked like a freaking 15-hour day. I'm on my feet. I'm in this hot kitchen. And then you see Katy Perry and Justin Trudeau walk in. Are you in hell? Probably. So Katy's making her way through Canada while on tour. I hope the tour is selling out. Performing tonight in Ottawa. with another show tomorrow back in Montreal. She recently ended her relationship with Orlando Bloom after 9 years together. So we'll be keeping tabs on this. Maybe Katy Perry is done with Hollywood. She's going to make a move to Canada. That would be great. Actually, I am totally fine with that, Katy Perry. But I have to imagine Katy Perry is a pretty smart, PR savvy kind of woman. She has to know going out in public on a date with Justin Trudeau, who's been estranged from his wife. I think he is divorced from his wife as of a few years. She has to know that this is going to get attention. It's probably going to make her ex jealous. It's probably going to make Orlando Bloom jealous. I don't think she's legally divorced from Orlando Bloom. Apparently, they were on vacation with Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez on their yacht. So maybe there's going to be some rekindling. But Katy Perry has to understand going out to dinner with Justin Trudeau is going to give her some press because here we are talking about it. So we wish the two lovebirds well. Enjoy this little beta male. I think these girls in Hollywood, what they really need, you don't need Orlando Bloom. You don't need Justin Trudeau. You don't need these little beta males. You need to go find like a plumber or a carpenter or an electrician or a man who knows how to do things with his hands, who's not part of the political elite or the Hollywood elite, just a man who knows how to get dirty and get things done and toss you around. That is probably what Katy Perry needs. That would be my prescription to her, but she's gone completely woke the last few years. So Katy, we wish you well. Are you a yo-yo dieter? You diet, lose weight, but gain it all back, plus a few extra pounds. Then later you lose it and regain it again and again. It's a dangerous cycle. Studies show that it can increase your risk of heart attack, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and other health problems. Breaking free of your yo-yo diet pattern is a main reason doctors created Lean. Lean is a supplement, not an injection, and you don't need a prescription. The science behind Lean is impressive. Its studied natural ingredients target weight loss in 3 powerful ways. Lean helps maintain healthy blood sugar, it helps control appetite and cravings, and it helps burn fat by converting fat into energy. If you're tired of losing weight and gaining it back, if you want to lose meaningful weight at a healthy pace, Lean was created for you. Get started with 20% off when you enter code LINK20 at takelean.com. That's code LINK20 at takelean.com. Well, President Trump has officially returned from Scotland. I was worried, okay? It was touch and go. It was dicey for a minute. I thought we were going to lose him, okay? I thought he was going to want to stay over at Scotland because it's much cooler than it is here in the United States right now in the summer. It is scorching hot across the US. If you're watching this right now, you probably know it's hot as hell. But President Trump, he seemed to be living his best life, okay? Everywhere he went, there were men in kilts with bagpipes and they're serenading him with this Scotland Highland music. It was incredible, okay? I had the honor of going to Scotland in 2018, the privilege of going to Scotland. It was beautiful. It was amazing. It was a little bit cold and windy, of course, but we actually went to Stornoway, where President Trump's mother, Mary McLeod Trump, is from. And in fact, this golf course, the McLeod course, is named after his mother, who he loves and holds dear. But while he was over in the UK, okay, with the kilts and the bagpipes and the pomp and the circumstance, he also secured one of the most historic trade deals we've ever had in American global history. Let me read you a little bit about this trade deal. So the EU will purchase $750 billion of US energy and make new investments of $600 billion in the United States, all by 2028. The European Union will pay the US a tariff rate of 15%. Okay, Trump went over there, art of the deal. The man came in with the wrecking ball and said, give me what I want, and he got what he wanted, okay? He got what he wanted, and I want to read you a little bit more about this trade deal, okay? This deal will enable U.S. farmers, ranchers, fishermen, and manufacturers to increase U.S. exports, expand business opportunities, and help reduce the goods trade deficit with the European Union. So all of this is amazing. Okay, the liberal media, they said he's going over there to golf. He's going over there to open his course. One thing about President Trump, he will come off that golf course, okay, and sign one of the most historic trade deals in global history, okay? So if being on the golf course gives him some clarity and gets him in the zone to go and secure the best deal for us, I'm happy about it. I'm also a little bit jealous because you know I love men in kilts and I love bagpipes. Where is my invitation? But no, on a real note, I couldn't be happier about this trade deal. One thing about President Trump, I think because this is his last term, he has nothing to lose. He's coming in and saying, give my people, Okay, the 300 million Americans, I'm here to represent the best deal for them. And I think President Trump is also thinking about legacy, right? President Trump has to be thinking about the fact that he has a legacy, right? He's going to be a legacy president, a transformational president. And I couldn't be happier that he secured this incredible trade deal. But something else I want to mention about the trip, right? There was a clip I saw of him taking pictures and interacting with the workers at his property. And I've been to several Trump properties, okay? I've been to Trump Tower, I've been all over. Everyone at his properties, they revere him, they love him, they all have nothing but good things to say about him. And many of these workers, if you go to Trump Tower, right? If you eat at the grill or the restaurant in the lobby of Trump Tower, these folks have worked there for decades, okay? They have nothing but incredible things to say about President Trump. I was at dinner the other night and folks were talking about the fact that he treats his workers incredibly well. So to see him with the workers and the way they respect him and the way he respects them, I love that. And that's a side of President Trump a lot of people don't get to see. Another side of President Trump I loved from the trip was Grandpa Trump, okay? A lot of people don't get to see this side of President Trump because he's this fierce negotiator. He's this guy who stands up with blood dripping down his face and he says, fight, 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 because he has to be that way. He has to be that way to take on the establishment, and politics is a blood sport, literally and figuratively at times. And so to see President Trump and the way he loves his grandkids and his children and the fact that they're all winners, that warms my heart. And it's something I know a lot of you guys love to see as well. And we spoke about this in the last episode. There's such a stark contrast between President Trump and the way he is with his kids and how his kids comport themselves and his grandkids, and the Biden family we had the last 4 years who basically turned the White House into a cesspool with cocaine left behind and topless trans folks out on the lawn. So to see President Trump with his young kids going back to the White House really warms my heart. It's something I love to see. And I think this trip to Scotland was a success. Okay, this trip to Scotland could not have been more of a success. And something that I found hilarious that I know a lot of you guys pointed out online, President Trump will go to other folks' countries, right? And he will have those world leaders come to him at his own properties, okay? That is when you know you have the upper hand in a negotiation. When they come to you at your castle, that is a boss move, okay? When you're like, you know what? Meet me at my castle with my name on it, with my bagpipe players and my men in kilts, and then we'll talk about the deal, Keir Starmer, okay? We'll talk about the deal, Starmer, when you show up at my doorstep, and then we can talk. I might even let you hitch a ride to the other castle, but you gotta show up at my property first. And so I think President Trump, I could not be happier that he secured this deal, and it's going to help generations to come, because we have been ripped off by the world for so long. We've been ripped off and ripped off and ripped off. And I know many of you are tired of seeing your jobs shipped overseas, especially with the increase in AI. We need to be prioritizing American workers, and that's something President Trump really cares about and that he seems to be doing. Now, someone who I don't think cares about the American people or her constituents, but she does seem to care about fame and fortune and likes and clicks and views, that is none other than Jasmine Crockett. So we have to do an edition of Crockett's Corner, okay? Thank you to my team for the graphic we're putting up on the screen. So Jasmine Crockett, this woman is the gift that keeps on giving, okay? Jasmine Crockett, she actually doesn't know when to quit, which is great for us because it's great fodder and it's great content. But Jasmine Crockett, she did this profile for The Atlantic, which you would think would be very friendly to her, right? The Atlantic is no friend of President Trump's. It's no friend of the Republicans. But even The Atlantic saw that Jasmine Crockett was basically a grifter trying to get fame, fortune, likes, and clicks. So let me read you about this profile and why it sort of ended and crashed and burned in flames. So The Atlantic, they do this profile, and some of the takeaways are that Jasmine Crockett thought she should be the top Democrat on the Oversight Committee because she has the largest social media following. She said, it's like there's one clear person in the race that has the largest social media following. Now, Jasmine Crockett, there's a lot of daylight between followers and clicks on the internet and people who actually get things done. Okay, some of the folks in DC who are really getting things done aren't folks you see on television all the time. They're not twerking down a hallway like Jasmine Crockett. Every time I see her, she's like twerking down the hall. She's dancing. She's, dancing to Kendrick Lamar. Why don't you go to work? Okay, and it really shows you that our thesis that Jasmine Crockett cares more about followers than working, she wants to twerk, she doesn't want to work, that thesis is true. She thinks that because she has the most followers, she should get some high position on a committee that really means a lot and has to actually do things. No. Okay, I want the person who doesn't live on social media all day and actually get stuff done. That's what I want. I think President Trump is the only person who can post on Truth Social and secure massive trade deals, right? He's the only person who can multitask and dictate in a fire tweet and then go get a massive deal done for us. Jasmine Crockett, she doesn't have that, okay? President Trump is singular. in that. But Jasmine Crockett really felt that because she had the largest social media following, she should be the head of the oversight committee. Okay. So now let me read you a little bit more. Is Jasmine Crockett a Democrat for the Trump era, as the profile suggests? She thinks so. And poll after poll since Donald Trump's reelection, Democratic voters have said they want a fighter. And Crockett, a former attorney who represents the Dallas area, where I'm from, unfortunately, everyone I know from Dallas hates her, she has spent 2.5 years in Congress trying to be one. The profile notes that she's become a big figure on MSNBC, and folks who watch MSNBC actually like her, and they think she could be someone to take on President Trump. So MSNBC, their ratings are in the gutter, okay? Their ratings are so low, they're in the seventh ring of hell, okay? The only people tuning into MSNBC at this point are a couple of miserable, lonely women sitting at home with their cats who need to feel coddled and who are triggered by the fact that President Trump is back in office and back in power. So the fact that that audience loves Jasmine Crockett isn't really a shock to me, okay? And if they think Jasmine Crockett and Gavin Newsom are these fighters who are going to take on President Trump, we've seen this before. I also think something that's missing from this conversation, President Trump, one term. So they're all thinking they're going to take on President Trump in 2028. Sorry, sweetheart, he's not running. You're going to have to either take on J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio or somebody else. But it's not looking like it's going to be President Trump, Jasmine Crockett. I don't know if anybody told you that. So let me read you a little bit more about this profile. Apparently, her phone's lock screen is a picture of herself. Is that a little bit narcissistic? Yes. Am I going to hold that against her? No. But her lock screen is a picture of herself. Now, where things started to get interesting, the journalist who wrote this piece reached out to other Democratic members of Congress, and apparently Jasmine Crockett got so angry, she called and tried to shut down the piece. Apparently she called and said, "What are you doing? Why are you calling my colleagues?" Apparently Jasmine Crockett doesn't know how journalism works. If you are doing a piece on a high-profile member of Congress, you're probably going to speak to other people who know them, right? There's a high probability you're going to call other members of Congress. I think Jasmine Crockett was scared she was going to be unmasked as a phony. You know, she didn't want anybody else speaking about her on the record because they might contradict her own statements. So let me read you a little bit about this. Senior staffers for 3 Democratic members told me that Crockett's colleagues see her as undisciplined, but are reluctant to criticize her publicly. She likes to talk, the staffer said. Is she a loose cannon? Sometimes. Does that cause headaches for other members? 100%. So they all see what we see. Basically, they all see that Jasmine Crockett cares about likes and clicks and fame and fortune and less about doing the work for the American people. And let me tell you, when you can't even get a glowing profile from The Atlantic and you're a Democratic member of Congress, Jasmine, I don't think you have a prayer. But Jasmine, we'll be keeping tabs on you and we'll be doing more editions of Crockett's Corner. Every week, Jasmine Crockett has a new wig. She has a new intonation in her voice. And as I told you guys before, Jasmine Crockett, she talks one way in private and one way in public, right? In private, Jasmine Crockett is like, well, we have to have a consensus on the legislation of the such and such. But when Jasmine Crockett gets on TikTok, she's like, this mofo, crack-a-lack-a-chicken, ain't fool, crack-back-a-back. That is how she talks in public. But in private, Jasmine Crockett is like, well, are we going to pass the bill on such? She's a phony. Okay? She's a phony. And a lot of folks in politics, they are phony baloney as well. But Jasmine Crockett, she seems to take the cake. But last but not least, the only way I'd support Jasmine Crockett running for president in 2028 is if she were on a ticket with Hunter Biden. You could do the crackhead and Crockett. Crockett and the crackhead. And I think we actually talked about that last week on the show, okay? You're gonna have Hunter Biden telling us how to do crack, which is not great for young kids to learn about. And then you can have Jasmine Crockett, who basically seems cracked out half the time. Well, they might be on a ticket together. They might be on a ticket together in 2028. And Miranda Devine, friend of the show, who's been on, we did a lengthy interview a few weeks ago. She actually asked President Trump about Jasmine Crockett and Hunter Biden running in 2028. Take a look.
But how about Crockett? Crockett's their new star.
Yeah, that's right.
And she's a low IQ person.
Well, it might be her and Hunter Biden. They could do a joint ticket.
This would be something. No, these people are crazy, so you never know what's going to happen.
I actually think the Democratic Party is so misguided. They might think, you know what? Hunter Biden was on a podcast really speaking some truth. Let's try it out. You know what I'm saying? So I actually wouldn't be shocked. I think Hunter Biden has some political aspirations. He really thought of himself as this great political strategist during his dad's term the last few years, but apparently he wasn't a great political strategist because he couldn't see that his dad was non-compos mentis and didn't know the temperature of the room. So Hunter Biden, Jasmine Crockett, maybe they should link up. Pun intended, maybe they should have a meeting of the minds, and we'll see what happens with both of them. Now, speaking of folks who want to run for president in 2028, we have to talk about none other than Mayor Pete. Pete Buttigieg, who you might remember as our former Secretary of Transportation, where he was an utter calamity, and he did not show up for weeks in East Palestine, Ohio, as toxic sludge was pouring through these people's neighborhoods, okay? It was a disaster. Well, Pete Buttigieg, the reason he was terrible as Secretary of Transportation, the only qualifications he had were filling potholes in South Bend, Indiana, and doing it for photo ops. Well, Pete does this sort of Jedi mind trick, right? He tries to couch himself as this moderate, middle-of-the-road guy, this common-sense guy who's going to call out the Democrats who are way too far left and progressive. Let me tell you, Pete Buttigieg is also a snake oil salesman, okay? Pete Buttigieg, kind of like when a guy buys you a diamond and it turns out to be a cubic zirconia. You know what I'm saying? It's like you think it's a diamond, but it's actually a fake and a phony, and it's going to kind of lose its luster in 2 or 3 years. That's where we are with Pete Buttigieg, because he even fooled me. I remember back in 2019 when he came onto the scene and he had his book out, I thought, oh my God, this is a nice, common sense guy. I can relate to him in some ways, but he's just as radical as everybody else. He just knows how to hide it. Well, he's not hiding it anymore. And I'm calling a flag on the play on Pete Buttigieg. And as I've told you, I don't know what calling a flag on the play means, but it's not a good thing. It's not good. Pete Buttigieg did an interview with NPR where he spoke about men and women's sports. And I want to take a look at that with you guys right now.
Well, I think the approach starts with compassion. Compassion for transgender people, compassion for families, especially of young people who are going through this, and also empathy for people who are not sure what all of this means for them. Like, wait a minute.
Hold up. Pause, production, pause. Let me just tell you. He wants to talk about compassion and empathy, right? You know what would be compassionate to these young people? These young folks who are confused, instead of telling them they need to be put on cross-sex hormones or that they need to sterilize themselves, you know what's actually compassionate and empathetic to young people in this country who are confused? Sitting them down and telling them the truth, okay? Not allowing teenage girls to get mastectomies in the name of gender dysphoria. That is actually compassionate, Pete Buttigieg. Honesty and truth and authenticity, they're the hottest commodities in politics right now. Pete Buttigieg, he doesn't have that. He doesn't have that. Many of the Republicans, they have it in spades. Pete Buttigieg, he doesn't have it. He's also a snake oil salesman. And he wants to talk about compassion and empathy. And I think about, what about compassion for someone like Peyton McNabb, right, who suffered brain damage because she was forced to compete against a man, right? What about these girls at Penn, Leah Thomas, Riley Gaines, and other girls across the country now who are starting to protest and walk off? They're starting to walk off at trophy ceremonies because they're tired of having to share locker rooms with men. They're tired of having to compete against men who come in at the last minute and take all that they've worked for. So we want to talk about compassion and empathy, Pete Buttigieg. Let's have compassion and empathy for the girls suffering brain damage. And what the Democrats always try to do is they say, this is a minority issue. It's just a culture war issue. It's not a big deal. This is only happening to a few people. So a few girls with brain damage is okay, but maybe a dozen would be too much, right? A few girls losing out on scholarships and medals they worked hard for, that's okay. But maybe a dozen might be too much. So Pete Buttigieg, he's full of crap. Let's continue listening to what this huckster has to say.
I got a daughter in a sports league. Is she going to be competing with boys right now? Right? And just taking everybody seriously. Mm-hmm. And I think when you do that, that does call into question some of the past orthodoxies in my party, for example, around sports, where I think most reasonable people would recognize that there are serious fairness issues if you just treat this as not.
Hold on. This seems to be the talking point for the Democratic Party, right? They don't want to give a straight answer on men and women's sports. If you remember Gavin Newsom, when he did the interview with Charlie Kirk, he brought up the word fairness. There seems to be an issue of fairness. They won't tell you yes or no. They're still lukewarm and pussyfooting around, but they say fairness. This could be a fairness issue. Pete Buttigieg, who probably wants to run as VP to Gavin Newsom's P, okay, in 2028, he also brings up the word fairness. I think he's full of crap. I also have to say this, and we don't need to play any more of the clip, actually, because as a man and a father, Pete Buttigieg, I question him, right? I question his fortitude. I question his masculinity. I question him as the head of his household. If he thinks there's any wiggle room on a grown man competing against a girl, then I have no respect for you. There's really no conversation left to have. This is an 80-20 issue, okay? In a New York Times Ipsos poll, you can look at any poll, you can slice or dice it, 80-20 issue. For some reason, the Democrats, whether it's lobbying, whether it's other forces at play, whether it's the top Democrat elite donors, some of whom will never know their names. But for some reason, the Democrats refuse to come to the middle and have some common sense on this. And the Democrats continue to couch this as a culture war issue, as something that's not a big deal. I call a bunch of buffoonery, tomfoolery, and malarkey. And Pete Buttigieg, I'm going to have my foot on your neck every day between now and 2028 because you're thirsty. You're thirsty to run for president. And I don't think you should be anywhere near the White House if you can't condemn men and women's sports. I actually think you would catch fire as a folk hero if you came out and said, you know what? No men and women's sports. If you came out and you said, you know what? We're not going to have men and women's sports, people would respect you. They would actually say, you know what? This guy is speaking some truth. But you refuse to do that and you look like a joke, and it's why you should not be anywhere near the White House. And I feel for your children that their father thinks it's perfectly fine for a man to come in at the last minute and take all that a girl has worked for. I think it's disgusting, but let's move on. When elites tell you what's right and who's wrong, it's rarely about truth, it's about control. They twist facts to protect their own, and people fall for it because it's easier to follow confidence than question the source. Ground News doesn't publish stories or push opinions. Instead, their app and website show how every issue is covered across the political spectrum. You'll see each source's bias, who benefits from their version of the truth, and what stories are being ignored altogether. Take the recent arrest of a Pulitzer-winning Washington Post executive, barely covered by mainstream outlets. Ground News flagged it in their blind spot feed, which highlights stories the media skips. If we want to fight back against hypocrisy, we need tools that show the full picture. Get 40% off Ground News Unlimited Access Vantage Plan at groundnews.com/link for about $5 per month to see through mainstream media narratives. Now, to round out the show, I want to talk about a quick story that's gone viral the last few days, and that has to do with actor Dennis Quaid. Okay, he's 71, he looks great, he's aging like fine wine, he just played Reagan in the Reagan movie. We love Dennis Quaid. He was also in The Parent Trap. I never saw The Parent Trap, don't hate me for that, but we love Dennis Quaid. Well, he's done an interview recently talking about the age gap he has with his wife. So he's 71 years old. His wife, Laura Savoy, she's 34, so they have a 39-year age gap, and people are hating on them. Everyone's hating on them, but let me tell you a little bit about what's happening. So they actually got married in 2020 during the pandemic when I guess she was 29 years old. And they got married during the pandemic. They've been together 5 years. So this isn't some short 6-month, 1 year, 18-month love affair. They've been together for a while. She's originally from St. Louis. She attended Pepperdine, where she was the class valedictorian, and then she went on to get her master's in accounting at the University of Notre Dame. Dennis Quaid says, I just love who she is as a person. Her character, her intelligence, of course, her beauty, and her point of view of the world. He goes on to say, and look, this is something everyone wants to hear from a man. Okay, I don't know a man who talks like this. If a man talks like this, call me. He says, every day is paradise. What can I tell you? I don't know why God had waited so long to bring her, for her to come along, but I'm really glad he brought her into my life, or I walked into hers. Well, let me tell you why it took a while for God to bring her into your life. It's because she wasn't born yet. That's why, 71-year-old man, why did it take so long for God to bring you into my life? Well, she was in diapers, so now she's older. So anyway, they have this amazing love affair. People online are having this huge debate over the age gap. Let me read you what she said about him. I've never met someone who is so in love with life. It's like nothing can bring him down. Just getting to do life with someone who lives that way is inspiring for me. It changes my perspective and it brings so much joy to every day. Now, they were asked about the 39-year age gap, and here's what he told Fox News Digital. I haven't spoken out about the age difference of my wife. Other people have, but I really don't think about it. She's got so much going on that, I just don't notice it. She's just the light of my life. I wasn't looking for it, but she came along and God put us together. I didn't go out looking for an age gap or someone younger than me. I met her at a business event and then their relationship developed. You have no control over who you fall in love with. I don't fall in love easy. So these two lovebirds, they seem in love. 5 years into the marriage, they still seem smitten with each other. That is a miracle. That is great. That is amazing. And I also think in culture, right, we love to have these debates over age gaps and this and that. I think maturity, life experience, passions, all of these things matter so much more than a numerical age. I think it's also someone like Dennis Quaid, right? He's 71. He's been in Hollywood his entire life, right? So as a man, he might be a little less mature. She's class valedictorian. She might be a little bit more mature. They meet in the middle, have some meeting of the minds. Who are we to judge? If they're adults, if they're in love, I think the relationship sounds balanced to me. Like she's the frickin' valedictorian, went to Notre Dame and Pepperdine and has all these degrees. I think it sounds great. I think a lot of people sitting at home right now who want to hate on Sydney Sweeney, who want to hate on this relationship, who just want to be haters. There's something in them. There's something in them that's insecure, and it's why they're lashing out and being negative in the comments. Because secure, happy people don't leave nasty, negative comments about someone's relationship that isn't affecting them whatsoever, except for me, okay? I get paid to run my mouth, but the people at home just running their mouths and leaving nasty comments and saying shady things, y'all aren't getting paid. So I am judging you. But something we have to talk about before we wrap up the show, I just wanted to do that quick story. I want to tell you guys that my team is going to have a little bit of a break. Okay, I want them to go on summer vacation. I want them to recharge. I want to recharge as well. So we're going to be dark next week. We've had this planned for months, right? We were told by the powers that be, everyone's taking a week off this summer at MK Media. You guys choose a week. So I couldn't be happier for my producer to have a week off. She just had a birthday. She's married. I want everyone to go rest and relax, but we won't have new episodes next week. Of course, if you follow me on X, Instagram, TikTok, I will be posting on my personal pages every single day because I like to chime in on everything. But I hope you guys are having an amazing summer, and then we'll be back the following week. And make sure to come back this Friday also, because we have a little conversation on YouTube with Jennifer Say, the head of XXXY Athletics, about all of these sort of brands moving away from woke. So tune into that. I will see you guys on the next one. Have fun, stay safe, bye.